recommendation 4, which suggests we look at strategies that have been worked in other communities. And to that end, we're excited to announce that we've engaged the services of Andrae Bailey with Orlando-based Lead Homelessness. Andrae is a highly respected nationwide leader who helped reduce homelessness in Orlando, Florida, 50% in 3 years. Yeah. Most important in this work, he led a very large collective impact effort to address this huge societal need. So he's now a leader working with communities around the country as they develop strategies to combat homelessness. And I know you'll enjoy hearing some of the lessons learned and best practices. And with that, I'd like to introduce Andrae and Orange County's own Keith Morrison to the stage. So please come up.
Let me tell you, I go around the country. Every big community, every big city in America struggles with this issue. There are topics that the big cities have to address to be great: tourism, transportation, economic development, and homelessness. And so in my community, homelessness was really a challenging issue for a long time. And I feel like my paradigm on we all look at life differently. I had kind of a little bit of a heart of a faith leader, but you know, it's not just thoughts and prayers that get something done. We've got to be able to mobilize ourselves together, put together big plans to make something like homelessness no longer a reality.
Well, this is a real problem because a lot of people have the philosophy, or at least, you know, these days you've either got it or you really don't got it. But, you know, polarization aside, a lot of people really do care a great deal about this issue, but they don't know how to connect it to some practical way of fixing it. And I think that's what you can tell us about.
So in Central Florida, homelessness, the other Orange County. So I was with the sheriff of your community, Orange County, yesterday, and I was with the Orange County sheriff the day before of Central Florida. We have a lot of similarities, Keith. We both have a Disney. We both have about 3 million people. And
it'll show up on DATELINE a little more often.
Yeah, Florida. You were telling me there's a Twitter for Florida? Or
that's right.
Because Florida. Because Florida. So if anyone ever criticizes your state or your community, if you feel that happening today, just remember, I'm from Florida. So it's all better. But you know, in our community, I walked in this room today, and I could feel this little bit of nervous energy in here, a little bit of, what are we going to talk about today? This homeless issue. How many of you would agree this is a top-of-mind issue right now? Raise your hand if you would say this is an issue. And that nervous energy reminded me of my community in 2012 and 2013. It reminded me of a time when we were spending a lot of money, we were kind of throwing our best efforts at it, but homelessness was at an epidemic level in Central Florida. And my job in 2013 was to bring together a new work that could address that. And I will tell you, kind of fast forwarding, when we got business leaders, faith leaders, and some of the most influential people to partner with government, all of a sudden we saw a change. Instead of the old model we used where we just kind of delegated this to the nonprofits or to a few folks in government and said, do your best. A complex problem like homelessness, it takes everyone in order to make solutions.
How did you get that disparate group of people to decide we're going to forget about the sort of, what do you call it, the go out and get a job moral question and concentrate on practically fixing the problem?
So I would say our solution began with the idea that we had a crisis. When I drove into town the first time, I came from LAX. There was no John Wayne flights available. And I drove past your Anaheim Stadium. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but there's a couple tents out there. I didn't even know. Come on, you can laugh at my jokes. They're actually much better than your laughter, just letting you know. But you know what? It reminded me, again, of my community, where we had tent cities in our local parks downtown, and that crisis is really, if you guys don't hear anything else I say today, this is one of two things I want you to hear. that this crisis, and you guys have a crisis. When I'm reading about you in Orlando without someone telling me to read about you, that means homelessness has risen at a level where it's dominating your community. But that crisis in our community was really the launching pad for the willingness of business leaders and others to get involved who hadn't been involved before. And so that crisis, really, that moment of crisis, it was the easiest time to pull people together because everyone knew we had to do something different.
Sure. Now, they are both called Orange County, but they're different sides of the country. This is a different place. It's got a different sort of past. It's,
You know I'm from the Deep South, right? So
I know, but you're speaking in a county which is known to be fairly, traditionally conservative and that has old-fashioned values at heart. At least a good many people here do. Is it the same problem here? Are they the same kind of people, the ones Sue Parks is talking about, the same kind you find in Orlando, the same problems?
So traveling around the country and talking to communities and seeing homelessness around the country, I will tell you, every community thinks that homelessness is unique in their community. Every community says, oh, you don't know about homelessness in Seattle or San Francisco or New York or Chicago or Orlando. So if you're ever in a conversation with someone here that says homelessness is just different here, you're in good company because every community believes that. But I will tell you, homelessness looks the same pretty much everywhere in America, because homelessness is a derivative of things like mental illness. It's a derivative of people who are in poverty, who just, we want them to just pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but they've been challenged in a way that's hard to do without some help. It's a challenge like that cost study talks about. What was it? 1 in 3 had been in domestic violence and sexual abuse. So you have that everywhere in the country, those conditions. So when you look at those around the streets, it's easy just to see them, what the streets have made them, the dirty clothes, that scary feeling of someone who's been out there a lot of years. But behind that, in every community, are stories. This is one of the big things that happen in our community. For so long, we looked out and saw these folks who were homeless. And we just said, hey, they're choosing to be out there. They're choosing to be out there, so what can we do?
They made some bad decisions. Why should we, fix them?
They've made bad choices, and, ultimately, we're the good people that make the good choices. That's why we're here in this beautiful OC Forum with this wonderful chicken salad and all of our friends. But those people out there, Keith, they've made bad choices, and so, what can we do for them but offer them a little blanket or a little, place to stay for a few hours at night. I will tell you this, one of the most important things we did is go onto our streets and learn the stories of those who are homeless. I think we're going to show a quick video right now. Let's show this quick video. It's called Cardboard Stories. I want you to see, we went on the streets with a small camera, some blank cardboard, and asked people to write down one fact about themselves. This is what we found, and this is what I think you guys are going to find.
I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings in the movies, and I'm not proud of my address. In the torn up town, no postcode envy, but every song's like gold teeth, Grey Goose dripping in the bathroom, bloodstains, ball gowns, trash in the hotel room. We don't care. We're driving Cadillacs in our dreams, but everybody's like crystal, Maybach, diamonds on your timepiece, jet planes, islands, tigers on a gold leash. We don't care. We aren't caught up in your love affair, and we'll never be royal. It's a run in our blood. The kind of luck's the same for us. We crave a different kind of buzz. Let me be your ruler. You can call me King B, and baby I'll rule. Let me live that fantasy.
Different than what we thought it was.
Yeah. Well, and as you say, we don't really know who these people are individually. Maybe we have to find out.
And again, in Central Florida, in the other Orange County, because we put the blame on folks who are on the streets. And now, by the way, we have conversations in my community now where we almost joke about this. We say, gosh, Andrae, you're going out to Orange County, California. Make sure to tell them, don't feel bad. We did everything wrong we could. Every wrong way to address homelessness, we did them all until we finally had a crisis that we had to look at something different and something that worked. But I will tell you, as long as we were able to look beyond the mental illness, the disabilities, the challenges that these folks faced, Keith, in our public policy, our investments, they never translated to the kind of commitment needed to make real progress. And so that was really the aha moment. I remember one of the first meetings that our mayor, Buddy Dyer, one of the best mayors in America, been transformational. One of our first meetings when we had brought our business leaders and our faith leaders and the most powerful people like this community is looking to do on homelessness, we were like, well, let's look at how many people in 1 month have gotten into housing, that permanent housing that Sue was talking about, and let's look at how effective this program is. We were doing a meeting like this, and our mayor walked up and he was handed a sheet of paper with the media in the room, and that piece of paper said this: we've got 9 people, Mayor, in housing this month, and 13 people died on the streets. 9 people got housing, and 13 people who were someone's son, someone's daughter, someone who was struggling with a condition beyond their control, died. And I watched my mayor, we're like doing this meeting like around the corner in this room with a live audience. And I watched him walk up, and he stood at a podium, and he was supposed to give this good news. And I watched him read this list, name by name: Tim Smith, Johnny Walker, not Johnny Walker, Johnny Walker was what we wanted after the meeting. That was a Freudian, Keith, for you and I later. He read these names. He read every name. And at the end, he looked at the crowd of business leaders and other elected officials, and he said, I failed these people. I, as mayor, failed these people, and I'm not going to fail them anymore. And that kind of cathartic taking of responsibility, it really, by seeing who these folks really were, I don't want this to sound like it's philosophical, what you need to do, and not practical. There's so much real work and investment that has to happen. But this is Orange County, California. Like, you're one of the most wealthy, successful group of people in America. You do what you set your mind to do. And so just like us, your neighbors in the other Orange County, until we had this epiphany about who was homeless, our dedication only matched that realization.
All right, so cut to the chase. What do we do? I mean, specifically and practically, what sort of decisions do you make? How do you do it?
I love this cost study that United Way did, and it predates me. I've only been hanging out with them a few months. They've been working on that a couple of years. But it really starts unpacking homelessness. When homelessness is just like, oh, look at all those people in those tents and those guys over there doing drugs, and the trolls on social media just throwing out, their crazy comments. You'll never solve anything that way. But when you start unpacking it and saying, like this cost study does, that a strong percentage, not all of them, but a strong percentage of your homeless are people with disabilities. They're mentally ill and disabled. Some of them are still veterans, and they're never going to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Again, lifelong Republican, master's degree in theology. You can't out-conservative me, okay? Go ahead and try. You can't. I can quote the Bible at you in Greek and Hebrew. So how about that? So ultimately, there are some people. The conversation about that we can't pay out everyone's bills, Keith, and that some like entitlements haven't worked in America. I'm all about that conversation. Entitlements by themselves hasn't worked. But in Orlando, we had to admit that we had a few thousand people that were never going to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. that if I had their circumstances and they had mine, I might need someone to pay for a 700 square foot apartment so I could rebuild my life with some long-term help. So we addressed, like this cost study says, cost study point Sue number 4. See, I told you I read it on the plane. So, but it addresses chronic homelessness. We started targeting the people that couldn't get off the streets, like Susan Price talks about this a lot, and help them get into a small apartment. And we probably have gotten over 2,000 people in about 2.5 years into apartments, and that's been a game changer to start.
There is this other amazing number that Max told me the first time I heard it, and I was shocked to hear that it costs twice as much money to care for a person on the street as it does to just put them in one of those little apartments that you talked about. So is that what you did, and did it save that kind of money?
You know, I met Max his last day on the job. The first day I was there was the last day he was there. So he met me and quit. So that tells you the faith that he had in me. So, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, okay. So, you know, again, we did a cost study, completely unrelated. I didn't know anybody here until just a few months ago. We did a cost study that it showed that it was 3 times as expensive. 3 times in our community. And you guys, yours is more comprehensive than ours. But that's a common thing, that you look at those who are chronically homeless especially, and they're getting arrested. They're going to the emergency rooms. That they're costing you, their impact on your community is so high. So we have seen a dramatic difference. Our local hospital had a press conference about 2 months ago. The emergency room costs for this population is down 64% in 2 years. 64% reduction in emergency room costs. So as a community, again, we were able to save money. But the cost study, what it doesn't touch on, and what was really a driver in our community, was just, again, the moral cost. What is it? We looked at each other in the mirror, and we said, what does it say about us in Central Florida that we do everything we put our hands to well? Tourism, transportation, we've revitalized our downtown, but in the shadow of that success, our most vulnerable neighbors in need are dying on the streets. So the cost financially and the moral cost to us, those were the 2 drivers, I think, to success.
Sure. You talked about, or Sue was talking about, frankly, and I know you do too, best practices. What are these best practices?
You know what's funny is how many business leaders we have in here? How many people run a business, manage a business, have ever owned a business? All right, you guys are like, so how many of you like run a business, manage a business? How many of you like business? How many of you like air? How many like air? Okay, so, all right. So here's why business leaders are so important. Because there's this weird phenomenon. I think Max can appreciate this, and Sue, you're going to learn this really well. You have the smartest people in a community who run billion-dollar companies, and they're used to boardrooms and data-driven solutions and looking for what works. Then you put them in a room on an issue like homelessness, and we just kind of make anything up off the top of our head, or listen to someone, just throw something out there and say, yeah, let's go do that. It's a phenomenon that often when we go to solve social issues, we don't take those same business-minded principles that says this. What if I were to tell you, Keith, that every community in America struggles with homelessness, every single one of them, but there are a handful, maybe about 10 to 15, that have had tremendous success, reduced homelessness by huge margins. But what if I told you every single one of them, without exception, reduced it the same way? Would that be interesting? Would that be compelling? As a business person, that is homelessness in America. The only communities in America that have reduced homelessness have done it virtually the exact same way. A business leader says this: if I'm investing my money, I look for what works. I don't bet on conjecture. I don't bet on chance. I bet on sure things. Business leaders were important in Central Florida because they made us look for what worked and ultimately move away from the world of public opinion.
So let me, some business leader or a business person in Orange County who wants to make a difference, who drives down this 57 freeway every day and sees those tents and thinks, oh my God, this cannot be in my town. What you're telling me he wants, or he or she should get engaged exactly the same way he or she does business.
Exactly the same way. I sat with the CEO of one of the largest companies in America a few years ago, and they said, tell me one thing I can do on homelessness, just make a difference, one thing. And I said, listen, treat homelessness like you treat this company. Look for the facts, make decisions by data, hold people accountable, and care about the heart and the culture behind it. And I know that sounds a little cheesy and philosophical, but I would just tell you, the people in this room, what's exciting to me, Keith, is I feel that same energy here in Orange County, California, that I felt 3 and 4 years ago in Orange County, Florida. That's a group of leaders who know something big has to be done, that there's good work happening, but something big has to be done. And when these type of leaders add to the good people already helping out, anything is possible.
I wonder, is anybody out here got a question you'd like to ask about? I think Mike's going to help with this and take the microphone to you. And you've got a specific question about what can be done, what you
The more
can do.
controversial, the better, by the way. Keith's going to answer every question you have.
Well, I know all the answers already.
Well, no, I'm going to ask the question. You just write them out. There's an index card. So for those of you that this was part of the self-instruction that Andrae was talking about in terms of change, there is an index card with a pen that you can have questions. Because of the room configuration today, it was a sellout. We aren't able to get me through here. So I'll be managing the Q&A. But I'll kick it off while people are writing questions, hopefully with really nice printing. And Barbara's doing hers right now. Andrae, one thing Keith touched on, you've been very clear about how important this is and your background in ministry and religion, how that's helped. But I think Keith touched on the fact we live in a very divisive time. And conservative and liberal, Democratic and Republican can agree on very little, even whether it's raining or sunny outside right now.
It's reasonably sunny,
It's
actually.
going to rain now.
Sort of halfway in between.
Yeah.
It's going to rain very soon.
Thank you. You guys practice. Are you going to perform tonight at a nightclub in Vegas too? Or okay. But seriously, one of the aspects of the Orange County Forum, we're a nonpartisan public affairs group that believes in discourse and civil discourse. How do you think today's political gridlocks can impact solving homelessness?
Oh no, that's yours.
You know what I have found? You know what I found? Uh-oh, my mic may be going out. What I found around the country is that you couldn't be more correct. We can't agree on anything in this country. But everyone, when they learn about homelessness and who's really on the streets, everyone can agree that this is an issue. If we can mobilize and come together on any issue, it's going to be an issue, a social issue like hunger, homelessness, poverty. And by the way, what's really great about the collaborative we did, Keith, is we said, listen, we got to solve this. And if your motivation is political because you got businesses pressuring you to clean up the streets, that's a good motivation. If your motivation is your faith, because your faith says this is the most important issue in the community, that's a good motivation. We'll take you too. If your motivation is different than those, homelessness is one of those topics, one of those community problems that everyone can find some place to sit at the table. And I think that's why this community really sits at a great crossroads with United Way and other business partners in the county and Susan Price and others to bring those top leaders together for different perspectives to make something important happen for people in need.
Right, although I think Mike still, it's still really a bigger question than that. And because, if we were going to
We're
go
going to talk about Trump? We're going to Trump?
well, that's where to go. But if we did a program on this particular topic and we put it on television right now, I can guarantee you that the Twitter feed would be so vitriolic about the things you're proposing that be done with homeless people because they don't deserve it.
Well, I'd say this. We were with a reporter yesterday, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, the comments on our Facebook are terrible if when we put stuff out like this." Listen, ignore the internet trolls. They're never going to do anything for you, and so we ignore them as well. But I will tell you, reasonable folks like the people in this room, when they read cost studies like United Way did that shows it's so much more expensive to let these folks be homeless and die, when they hear stories, I think United Way is going to partner with some other leaders in this community. You just saw the people in my community in one video we did. What if I come to you and show you videos of folks in your community that have that same condition or conditions where they're not out there by choice? Ultimately, that belief argument on homelessness, I think that is an area that we can get beyond Democrat, Republican. We can get beyond, our ideology. And I think all of us can agree that helping the least among us in this community is important. Keith, the last thing I'll say on that topic is, really, we got to a place in Central Florida where we said, and we're not perfect, we have a lot of work left to do on this issue.
Because Florida.
Because it's Florida, obviously. That's true. But we had a lot left to do. We had a lot left to do on this issue, but we just got to a place where we said, listen, ultimately, this is an issue that reflects on us as a community. It's about who we are.
It stares at you with accusation in its eye.
And all the accusations were true. That if we as a community had all this success and prosperity, but we didn't take care of the least among us, what does that say about us? Who are we? And by the way, as long as you and I think that they're out there by choice, I get to detach from that. You see how as soon as I put the responsibility on me, then I can't wiggle out of it. So whether people are homeless or not, if you believe, I know you might believe they're homeless by choice. You might believe it because I used to believe that. Years ago, I believed people were out there by choice, and there are some folks out there by choice. I know that it's not a black and white story, but the vast majority are out there because of things beyond their control. And if that's true, that puts that burden on leaders to address it.